Welcome to the show where we discuss the first Marvel Netflix series and discern the truth about why this show stands above the rest. The elements of quality storytelling that other shows are blind to.
But not this show.
This show. So join us as we start Discerning Daredevil. And tonight we are talking Season 3, Episode 6, The Devil You Know. That's right, Dragon. In this corner, Daredevil! And in this corner, Daredevil! A little bit of Daredevil, the Daredevil action. Or as Turk Barrett would like to say, come on, Double D!
Come on, D. Come on, other D.
Why can't all the D's just get along, yo?
Yep.
All right, anyways, Dragon, enough silliness. This is a big episode, a lot to cover, a lot to get into. Let's just start breaking it down right away. Let's get into the plot. What do you got?
All right, folks, plot goes like this. So, Daredevil seeks Karen. He seeks Karen's help reluctantly to clear Matt Murdock's name by finding Jasper Evans, who of course is kind of the linchpin to Fisk kind of orchestrating his stabbing in prison so he can get out of prison. So again, Jasper Evans is the key in the way of unraveling Wilson Fisk. So the plan is to get Karen to kind of write an article to expose this guy and essentially have him confess to the FBI. Dex, meanwhile, Dex is the fall guy for the FBI's, kind of a convoy catastrophe of earlier episodes. They're making Dex the fall guy, which leads him to having a mental breakdown. Big one too. And Fisk, this leads to Fisk corrupting Dex into doing his bidding finally, which leads to a massacre at the Bulletin by Dex in a Daredevil suit. All to kill Evans before he implicates Fisk. So all of that just to kill one guy. And that's the episode.
All right. Sorry, Dragon, I'm on the other side of the room, grabbing a Red Bull. Let me get back here. My bad. You summed that up quicker than I thought you would. Okay.
Thanks for a vote of confidence.
Right. Let's get into arcs.
Yes.
Okay, so where do we start, Dragon?
Well, we start with the man himself. We start with the Murdock. We start with blind Matt Murdock.
All right. Okay, so Matt, for the first time in this episode, through the season, I think is beginning to show a little bit of humanity. I think the central scene in Matt's arc, which I'll kind of bring up as a flag post, and then we'll kind of build how we got there, I figure, is the scene with Maggie.
Yeah.
Where Maggie's just kind of calling him out, like, "Hey, looks like you're ready to smile again. Look who's cracking jokes." And I gotta say, it's a really charming kind of. It's nice to see Matt. Like, there's still a lot to work out. Like, Karen is still a little bit like disquieted by him, as we'll get into with some other stuff. But yeah, I just think this episode is a good kind of like it's cementing the final building blocks to Matt Murdock's return to society.
That it is. Of course, Sister Mag is kind of a great anchor point that the season's kind of set up for that sort of thing, where we kind of see how kind of like kind of the darkest hour of his soul Matt is at kind of the start of things in the first two episodes, and kind of Sister Mag is our way of checking in with him. It's kind of a great way of kind of touching base and taking the temperature on Matt Murdock, and of course we really kind of, it's a great barometer to have with him at this point. So in regards to Matt's arc, where we find him at this episode, so bear in mind, the last time we really saw Matt, I know he was at the end of the last episode, but let's just play ball with me here. So, I mean, after, think about this. If you're in Matt Murdock's shoes, you're in Daredevil's shoes, after the really he had a really humbling experience that's kind of gotten to the more kind of the more human kind of Matt Murdock that we're dealing with now. He had a really humbling experience as kind of a lone vigilante who's again kind of has the Frank Miller fault where he's he's rushing into things. He's very impatient. He essentially wandered into a trap that Fisk had set at the prison. So he wanders into a trap because he's kind of desperate and just kind of throwing himself into things. And of course, he kind of hurt his friends to get results. Took Foggy's bar card. He made a lot of mistakes, and of course, all of these have kind of led to, again, he walked into a trap, and and of course, he's now been framed. Matt Murdock has been framed because of his carelessness. And of course, Fisk knows that won Matt Murdock's back, which again kind of led to the frame up, and of course, his friends facing quite the conundrum. Now they're on the hook for everything that he's done. And of course, this kind of leads to the bigger questions of how culpable are they for Daredevil as a concept? And of course, the biggest irony that hits him is that he tried to distance his friends so this wouldn't happen. And of course, the very same people he tried to protect by keeping a distance, they're now on the hook because he tried to protect them.
Exactly. Specifically because he kept a distance, they are now pretty much screwed because of that.
So I read it as he's reluctantly accepting that he needs their help to clear his name, and especially to take responsibility. It's not just like a selfish endeavor of clearing his name, as he kind of goes through in the episode with Maggie. It's that other people's lives are at stake because of his actions. So he's taking responsibility in a great way here. And I want to talk about one of the major themes of the episode, again stemming from the episode's title. It's all about the devil. That it's an old adage that again we've given great thematic crux to this episode. So this is a really reflective arc for Matt, where again the devil he knows. He's of course it's going to be literalized later in the episode, but he's kind of facing up to his own actions. He's reflecting on the actions of of Daredevil specifically, of him just kind of cutting out Matt Murdock and just kind of the actions of the vigilante side of himself, and basically all the stuff of cutting Matt Murdock out. So this of course this leads to again pursuing Jasper Evans and trying to clear his name. I think the bigger question the episode poses is why. Why does he want to do that again? Because in theory, he could just go around life as Daredevil. If he truly doesn't care about Matt Murdock, why is he doing this? As we mentioned, it's kind of I'd say it's for a twofold reason. The obvious reason is again he's taking responsibility to help his friends out. I'm going to posit this. I like to think, of course, when people do things, there's the main reason, then there's kind of a subconscious reason, a reason deep down what's driving their actions. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're getting a little heady for me, but sure.
You tell me if I'm crazy on this. You tell me if I'm like Benjamin Poindexter on this one. But
I wouldn't say Benjamin Poindexter, but I'd say it's a little like you're looking into it a little heavier than I am. But by all means, continue.
Well, I wonder this. I wonder if deep down, given how much he has a hatred for Wilson Fisk and everything, especially after the big moral kind of conundrum of episode 3 of do I kill him or not? Is he actually making a difference versus kind of what I've been doing? Just kind
so
of
what you're saying? Are you saying that he's basically locking himself away for the safety of himself and the safety of others, basically?
I wasn't going there. It's a good. I didn't think of that. It's kind of interesting. But what
he's locking himself away specifically so he can't get to Fisk, or that he can't. I don't know. Basically, he's taking himself out of the equation.
Well, here's what you bring up a really interesting thought I'm going to get to in 1 second, Tiki.
All right.
I think it's a really great thing there. What I was going to get at is that I think Matt cares about the name of Matt Murdock, even though he says he doesn't. I think he cares about it because, remember, Matt Murdock as a character who's kind of the lawyer Matt Murdock is representative of the dream that his father had for him. And I think Fisk, in framing Matt Murdock, saying Matt Murdock was dirty, that it was in his pocket, I think that's insulting the memory of Jack Murdock. And I think that's kind of what's hitting him at his core on some level.
Sure.
But I'm saying, again, if of course, you look at Wilson Fisk as a character as well, it's kind of going with that parallel. These are characters who are driven by the actions of their fathers and kind of the impact their fathers had on them. I do wonder if maybe deep down that's kind of a reason why he's also clearing Matt Murdock's name outside the obvious taking responsibility for his friends. But the point that you brought up, though, about kind of willing to take the punishment, willing to go down, to kind of separate himself, there's this wonderful moment in the episode where Matt Murdock, again, he's in taking responsibility, the closest thing to an upside that he has in this terrible situation is, well, if they lock me up, if the FBI has put two and two together and they figured out that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, because they don't know it 100%, but Smart Money says they don't know at this point. If they know, perhaps maybe they'll lock me in a cell next to Fisk where I can just kind of irritate him or beat him with all the lips.
Right.
And even Karen
saying he's not even saying that he wants to kill Fisk in prison. Just let me just troll Fisk.
I know, that's the thing, and again, it's kind of fascinating that he's kind of playing. Yeah, so it's again in a way, and again, kind of like pairing it to another theme of the episode. Another theme of the episode was sin, especially with Karen's story. Sin is a big element of this episode. Sin and devils, and so on and so forth. And if you really look at it, Matt is, in accepting Matt Murdock back into his life, he battles, by the end of the episode, he battles a symbol of Daredevil. And of course, with the red suit and everything, the icon of the hero that he was at his peak. So ultimately, he faces, again, that this whole season so far up to this point, especially episodes 1 and 2, have been all about, like, the story, the whole Job idea, the story of Job. Like, are you being punished by God, or is this just your fate? Where, like, is God rewarding you by kind of giving you purpose yet again, and kind of allowing you to survive everything you've been through, and just kind of you keep going even though it's a crap job? Or again, is this punishment for kind of questioning him this season, where he kind of, this continues the punishment for, like, the betrayal of himself, the betrayal of his friends, like stuff he did to Foggy and everything, and just rushing it and the kind of being careless. Is like, there's all of this, is everything is going through a punishment. I think that's kind of the bigger question. Like, is this punishment for his sin that one could deem sin, or at least that he might deem as a sin that he's caused?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Just really, so again, the point being, like, again, he's self-reflective, which includes, like, maybe the punishment, again, is kind of fitting, like, him distancing himself from the idea of Daredevil, which is kind of being physically put in front of him by the end of the episode. It's kind of what I'm getting at. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay, let's talk about Wilson Fisk.
All right, so essentially with Fisk, he's just he's trying desperately to maintain this this new status quo he set up for himself, and as a matter of fact, he's trying to also heighten the status quo. You know what I mean? He's getting a little bit too comfortable in his lifestyle. He's trying on the suits. He's anticipating Vanessa's return. He's eating good meals. His control over the situation is just, it's the grasp on it is tightening and tightening.
Yeah, Fisk, I would read Fisk as one of the devils in question. Of course, season 1 definitely put this into play, where, again, like, Matt is kind of wondering, like, would he be a representation of the devil, in terms of, like, they had that scene with Father Lantom way back in the first season. So Fisk has always been kind of like a devil figure in Matt's eyes. And of course, like any interesting devil figure, it's going to be a question of, like, how, it's going to be a question of again, like, how sympathy for the devil, that sort of thing. Like how evil is he, where he's trying to help New York? And again, we asked that bigger question, and this season with episode 3. So basically, Fisk, with this episode, again, the devil, Fisk could be seen as the devil in question, or you could see his story as, he's the devil that Dex knows, and of course, and in turn, he knows a Daredevil, which will be Dex in the episode. So we're gonna have kind of a couple layers.
Well, I mean, he knows two devils at this point. I mean, he knows who Matt is, and he knows Dex. So his Rolodex of devils is at least up to 2.
So again, it's kind of a fascinating kind of triangle of devils when you think about it. Again, Fisk
is the devil in Matt's eyes. Maybe he's familiar with the Jersey Devil Dragon.
No, but seriously, dude, just consider it a second. Imagine how trippy that is. You have, like, a triangle of 3 characters that each see the other one as a devil in some way, shape, or form. Think about it.
Right.
We have the literal, again, 2 guys who are daredevils, and of course, it's, you have Wilson Fisk there again as kind of the personification of the devil.
It's like the 2 ones that are daredevils are like the more traditional, like, devils with the horns and everything in terms of design. Whereas Wilson Fisk is like the newer, like, Hades Town interpretation of the devil with the, the slick suits and the used car salesman speech and everything. You know what I mean?
Or for the non-musically inclined Lucifer, like the TV
show.
Sure. Look at it that way.
That's another good example. Yeah.
Kind of the more modern take on the devil. But again, anyway, so in terms of what I love about Fisk's arc here is that, so again, aside from just your devil parallels, I'm just kind of going with the thematics of the episode. What I love about this is that the long game that he's been playing really pans out. Because think about it, Tiki. Essentially, I know, like, 13, not exactly an even split here, but let's just say this episode, to me, this episode on the whole feels like the halfway point of the season for me. It really does. And in looking at it that way, he does, think about it, let's argue the halfway point of the season, he gets half of what he wants this episode. Of course, Kingpin wants 2 things. As we said way back there in the first episode, he wants 2 things. He wants Vanessa, and he wants the status. The status and he gets the status. That's the thing. He gets the status and the lifestyle right now. Where again, this episode, he regains power. He regains status. Just he lacks Vanessa. Basically, from what he promised back in season 2, he wants he and Vanessa be reunited with a view, essentially looking down on New York. And of course, he basically lacks Vanessa and the view. That's always lacking, right? Like the freedom to like walk out on the terrace or something that's going to get a view. That's really always lacking.
Right.
So so of course we learn. Basically, we learn this episode. There's actually a really fascinating detail we learned about Fisk that Vanessa means more to him than ever before after the death of his mother while he was in prison. So again, that kind of adds to like the crux of how Vanessa's always been an important factor to the Kingpin. I've always found fascinating the women in Kingpin has as a weakness for for women. Like I've always posited that one episode's going to put that to the test, and we'll get to it episodes down the line here. I would argue that Kingpin would not hurt a woman, because he has his mother, who's been a very pivotal figure in his life, and of course Vanessa. I would make that point.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's going to be a challenge to that later on down the line, a big exception to that. But
again, we'll get to it when we get to it. I think that may not be as much of an exception as we think. But
okay.
Anyways, sorry, getting back on point here. So the fact of the matter is, so again, the point is like we understand even more. So, oh God, that's why he feels more alone than ever before, and Vanessa's still around, and he wants to be with her because again, he's lost that other semblance in his life. So they kind of add a little bit extra to him here. Of course, like all the research and the strategy he did with.
Reagan, hold on. Well, I'm sorry. I'll get to it when we get to the dynamic. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I love that all the research and all the strategy with Dex pays off this episode in Bullseye. All the stuff that he went to learn in episode 5. So again, the long game of it all is absolutely paying off. And again, think about it. By the end of this episode, he has framed both Matt Murdock and Daredevil. He can't hide anywhere.
Right.
with his, and of course it's Kingpin doing what he always does. He takes care of the loose ends, and Jasper Evans, he's Kaputski, and he's freeing Daredevil in the process. And something kind of interesting.
We're gonna have to go to go and get a new suit with a new superhero identity. He's just gonna have to be like, I am Windmill Man.
Oh God, no, he's Stilt Man.
Oh God!
We saw that costume. We know Stiltman. Stiltman's around.
All right. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In all seriousness, though, so one last thing to note with Fisk here is again, I found it kind of interesting on a rewatch that Fisk as a character again, he's moved forward in terms of fashion and his arc. Where again, he's regained power, and essentially he's kind of visually what we always identified as the Kingpin. The big guy in the white suit as the Kingpin. So he's moving forward in his arc, in his kind of his grand kind of fate in the arc of the series, where Daredevil visually, he's reverted backwards. He's gone back to the season 1 mentality. Think about this, after all the progress of Daredevil to Defenders, where he's in the Daredevil suit, he has like the billy clubs that has like has the line and everything. The point of like we see the most fully formed Daredevil in Defenders, and we strip him all the way back to season 1, and his thinking and his visual style. And Kingpin has in diametric opposition. He's gone completely forward. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, let's get to Dex. Oh man, big stuff with Dex this episode, of course.
Absolutely. So Dex is on a downward spiral this episode. He's lost because last episode things blew up in his face with Julie. So he's in essence, in losing Julie, he's lost all stability and balance with her and the FBI. The two things that are keeping him balanced and stable and kind of regular. The relationship he had with Julie, and that job where he can basically channel his his more violent tendencies into something positive. He's lost both of those things because he's kind of blamed for all the stuff that went wrong during the convoy, unfortunately, and that's not fair to him too. By the way, he did kill some innocent people, but still, I mean, there's the whole thing on it.
Like we tomato. We do.
Well, again, I shouldn't say innocent because I mean they were Albanians.
Right.
Who were
Sure.
You know what I mean? He killed unarmed men. He basically was unsportsmanlike. So again, the fact of the matter is, and this is kind of what we had since in his kind of his post interview on that sort of thing, where Dex he's interviewed by the therapist, by this department psychiatrist, and again, if he were wearing a mask, he'd be lauded. We have a big payoff to that with Dex here, where again his acts of as he deemed heroism were deemed unfit, and he is thrown under the bus. He's before he kind of gets ultimately what he's kind of put into play at the very start of the season, before he dons the guise of a hero. Think about this. He dons the guise of a hero. He wears a mask by the end of things. In wearing the mask, he has the freedom to commit all of these atrocities with with such precision, by the way. Just again, just wonderfully precise atrocities too. Just with that marksmanship, darn it, it's just so cool.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about that when we get to
Yeah,
the moment in the
we
Daredevil
will.
probably, but yeah, just awesome use of the actual skill set, on screen for sure.
I love where we go with him, though. Think about it. So again, he's always wanted to be a hero. Essentially, where he thinks of himself like any classic great Marvel villain. You think of yourself as a hero, and again, kind of as a starting place for Bullseye's arc. That's quite fascinating on this kind of this reinvention of Bullseye for the MCU.
Like when we first see him, he's almost kind of like a white knight.
Essentially, yeah. Again, he saves Fisk and Nadeem. He saves their bacon. And by the end of things here, so again, he kind of becomes a hero, but a perverted version of a hero, again, in donning the guise of Daredevil. Again, and in doing all of this, he has freedom to commit these atrocities with such precision, and he's stable emotionally, but ethically. That's the thing, like emotionally, this costume gives him stability. He has a patron in Wilson Fisk, which we'll get to a little bit later, as a patron in Wilson Fisk, and a way to channel his stuff outside of the FBI. But ethically, he's completely out of whack more than ever. His North Star is completely corrupted. But again, emotionally, he is more clear and more level-headed than he's ever been before. So again, it's so twisted where we go with him. Because I mean, in building up to that point, he's we saw how he was spiraling out of control. I mean, without getting to all the nitty-gritty of it, again, like he has his tapes stop bringing him comfort. He's I love how we use these negative snippets of his past all throughout the episode. I mean, just in terms of that, and it just leads to some really artful stuff in the episode. And
it's all kind of like a build up to my blinding moment with the stuff happening in his head.
Right. And I guess one last thing to mention is again the skirt around just kind of like how we do this thing precisely. But he almost Dex is driven to the ultimate low point. He almost commits suicide. Which, of course, given the fact he worked at the suicide hotline and the fact, again, the bigger idea I want to hit here before we move on from Dex is we have that great line last episode, death always wins. That's his philosophy in life from Dr. Mercer. Death always wins. And again, ultimately, he's playing into that philosophy. Well, if death always wins, there's only one way out for him.
Another good trope of villains, not just Marvel villains, but villains in general, is taking a positive philosophy and twisting it to their own devices.
Exactly. All right. So again, really fascinating stuff with Dex, and of course, the idea goes from just someone who's spiraling out of control in Fisk. He kind of finds stability, and that leads him to the path of the quote unquote hero, who is just a tool of the villain, but he thinks he's in the right. All right.
Okay. All right. Almost there. Almost to the arcs. Let's talk about Karen. So a lot of interesting stuff going on with Karen Dragon, especially on a rewatch. First of all, I really like what we did with how she got a hold of. God damn, I'm so bad with names.
Jasper Evans.
Jasper Evans, yes. Going to the drug den, and it's kind of like it first when that scene's first playing out, we're like, oh no, Karen, the situation's overwhelmed you. Don't do it, Karen. Don't do it. All of that was really clever. And essentially with her, I just really like how she ends up in such a dark place. Like, she's trying to be super altruistic, and very much so, she is in the right here. You know what I mean? Like, she is definitely, she is doing the right thing. Ellison even, commends her for it. He's saying, like, look, thank you for, pushing me along with this, and thank you for having the guts to really put your foot down and make me do this, because this is important. This kind of stuff needs to get out there. And at the end of the day, she's crushed for doing the right thing, Dragon. She's totally punished for doing the right thing. It's like, by doing the right thing, she's got a ton of blood on her hands.
Absolutely. I'm going to backtrack for a moment here. I just want to start with kind of where Karen starts in the episode here. She's confronting Matt this episode. Of course, she's been separated from Matt all throughout this season so far. This is the first time she has a scene with him. Like, and she finds out Matt's alive, and she's really ticked off about that. Like, he's alive and he hasn't even come by yet. She's paying his rent on his apartment and everything. So she confronts Matt. And of course, the fascinating thing this season is
the
that
first
Matt,
thing she says to Matt when she sees him is, "You owe me for rent."
Exactly, almost like a certain Spider-Man character. Rent. No. But all seriousness, though, I do love that she's kind of giving Matt a taste of his own medicine here. with with her own kind of Daredevil tactics. Again, I still think it's one of the most fascinating things rewatching this season is that Karen Foggy again have kind of taken to a side of Matt Murdock in terms of their arcs this season. Again, she's been kind of going off the lone gun kind of Daredevil side of things. That's how she's been operating. And Foggy's been kind of championing kind of the law and order of let's bring this down within the system of Matt Murdock.
Sure.
And again, so think about this. If you're Karen, your prayers are answered, but now just the miracle has been tainted. That he's back, but he's treating his friends like crap. And it's like, oh man, like he comes. We want him to come back to life, and he does. And he wants to cut us out of his life and everything. It just and of course she does blame herself for his fate in a way because the whole how she took the Matt Murdock being Daredevil news from Defenders and everything. Well, from the end of season 2 into Defenders, everything. She felt guilty about this. Again, like all that guilt that she feels. Sure. I guess the real big takeaway with Karen before we get into some other kind of like a big scene that she has with a few other characters. I think the big takeaway with Karen is, again, I think she, again, with the theme of the episode, the whole devil Karen views herself as kind of as the devil that people know. She really has a negative opinion of herself. Like a lot of her sin is a lot of her self-imposed sin is on her mind here because she's, let me rephrase that. I feel Karen is kind of succumbing to sin this season. Like she's putting the sin of like the death of her brother onto herself, and that's kind of coming back to the forefront here in a lot of places. I think that's why she's basically for the stuff that happened with Wesley last season. She's kind of putting a lot of that on herself, where she thinks she thinks she's a terrible person. She thinks she's done bad stuff, and she just continues to put all of that on herself. And again,
so she's been harboring that for a while now.
Exactly, and now it's coming to the surface, and now she's she's endangered things because of her past coming to the forefront. It seems to be kind of a running theme with her, the past coming to the forefront and kind of ruining the life that she's kind of built for herself with Nelson and Murdoch. And ultimately, I think what we're kind of setting up here is that Karen, she goes, as you mentioned, Tiki, she goes to a den of sin with the drug den with a lot of the people taking drugs and everything, just like all this. People on their last legs, a culture that she's familiar with, which we'll find out a couple episodes from now. And I think all of this is kind of leading to, basically all of her sin kind of leads to death in one way or another. It leads to death in the sense of, again, a lot of people die this episode because of her actions. People, of course, ultimately, will she or won't she die? A lot of that just kind of based on what, what Born Again and Guardian Devil are kind of all about, like that sort of stuff. So again, like her tactics, her very Daredevil-like tactics are kind of bringing her to this place where, again, she herself might be a little far gone, where Matt is kind of finding his way back into the light, one could say.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, she does have a wake-up call, though. So, I mean, that's kind of good progress for him. We'll see if she's going to be able to get out of the woods on that one a couple episodes from now. We'll see.
Right. Oh, one last thing to mention. I'm sorry. We get a really powerful shot. If this is the last thing you want to bring up with her.
I'll save it for when we get to the other stuff with Karen. So go on.
Okay, we get a really powerful shot at the very end, towards the very end of the episode, where she's just sitting in the bulletin, like completely dazed, just completely like, what the hell just happened? And I brought this upon myself. Where there's just like a couple dead bodies and just literally the blood of Jasper Evans on the wall next to her. You know what I mean? I don't know, Dragon. On rewatch, I found that shot in particular pretty haunting.
You know what's really haunting and fascinating about that shot, Tiki, is the fact that Karen, she has a bit of blood on her too from the blood spatter and everything. And, her being in a helpless position with a dead body in the room and everything. Again, kind of takes her back to the helplessness that she found herself at the very beginning of the series. Remember, Karen's introduction is like dead body. She wakes up to a dead, bloody body. And
exactly.
It kind of takes her back to that. Again, as far as Karen's progressed, and again, I think that I want to emphasize wake-up call. She has a couple wake-up calls, one we'll get to a little bit later, but in terms of the wake-up call to herself, this is something of like, look what your Daredevil tactics have brought you. A lot of people have gotten hurt, and you're back to where you started. So again, we're taking her back to where she started, so hopefully she can kind of come into the light from, again, kind of going as far as she can go as Matt has kind of found himself the hard way during the prison episode. So again, we're kind of linking their arcs as well as kind of her self-realization. All right.
Okay. All right, so finally, let's get to Say It With Me, Dragon. Say it with me. Keep a little breath. No!
Nadim!
All right.
Nadim!
Okay. Oh, man. That's... That is definitely the running gag of the season. Anyways, what's up with Nadim this episode, Dragon? You start us off.
All right, so Nadim, of course, Nadim continues to be on the level, and it's someone you can trust to make the Murdoch deal, because essentially, Foggy's like, okay, we need to bring a deal with the FBI, and the idea, again, they're not just going to sell Matt out to the FBI. Like, the idea is that the FBI probably doesn't know who he is. It's just Matt Murdoch kind of coming forward and clearing his name, and with Jasper Evans, they'll go by quick and painlessly. Okay, Matt can prove that he isn't corrupt because Jasper Evans will attest that Fisk is making this up and he's not on the level. He's kind of lied to in getting himself stabbed, all that stuff. So the point being, Nadim is someone who's, again, we wonderfully set up that we can trust all throughout the season. Again, Nadim, Tiki, as you have kind of phrased him as, the analogy. In comparison, who's he the better version of?
Oh, right. The better Nadani.
Yes, the better Madani.
Yes.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. So Nadim, he continues to be someone we've set up to trust, and again, even when he's locking horns with Foggy in the previous episode, again, he's still someone like you understand. Oh man, Nadim, he's just being led astray. But darn it, again, he's not. He's not. It's not the typical thing like, oh god, I hate. Why can't our guys get on the same page? Like, oh man, I wish these guys get on the same page. It's like, come on, Nadim, wake up. He's playing you. Come on. But that's the wonderful thing, because we set that up so well. Now Nadim is kind of, with this deal being put in place, it sounds like, oh man, what if this is true? He's questioning his actions. Like, he's asking himself the big thematic title of the episode here. Did I make a deal with the devil? Is Fisk the devil that I know? Am I being conned right now? And I love that the minute that we raise
all his problems are solved, but at what cost?
Precisely, and Tika, I love it. I love that the second he has that thought, he walks into Hatley's office, and Hatley says, "Hey, good news! Your money problems are solved, and you got your promotion." So basically, all your problems at the start of the season are solved.
Like, oh, all right, cool. I'm gonna just walk off into the sunset now and not be involved at all.
He's got this huge ethical dilemma now, and this is questioning this major shift in the status quo. Like, oh God, is it basically all the work, all the stuff I've just kind of used to dig myself out the hole could come undone here. I mean, what's the right thing to do? And basically right now he's just trying to doubt himself with Hadley, just saying, okay, it's got to be a bluff. But again, Nadim being the good man that we've set up here, again, you can see on his face, he's going to take the situation as it comes. And what's so fascinating here is that he's blindsided by the bigger shift in status quo. Not the status quo shift he was expecting. Oh man, Fisk has been playing me, but by the bigger out of left field status quo shift. And like, there's another Daredevil who's killing people?
Right.
Or like basically Daredevil's back and he's killing people? So he's so again, he's so close. This episode, he's so close to being enlightened to the truth, but in the end of the day, he's misdirected, just as Fisk had planned. He just planned that he was misdirected. Hence the whole, sending Daredevil of all people to kind of like kill Jasper Evans. So, and speaking of which, we should also touch on a big scene that I would argue saves Nadim's bacon. I want to get your thoughts on this. So, Dex and Nadim, of course, Dex, Dex saved Nadim's life, and he's very grateful to him. We kind of said they have like a nice dynamic that's going to continue to evolve a little bit here. Where again, there's a bit of a friendship, definitely a respect at the very least. He's loyal to the man who saved him, and he's done all he can because, of course, Dex, when he gets essentially gets his walking papers. Dex, he's free falling, and like Nadim's like the only friendly face he has there, and even he's like saying, "Well, Nadim, why don't you look at me when you say everything's fine? Everything's gonna go well for me here." And again, Nadim, I get the sense that he's going to bat for him. I like to think that Dex is kind of has a thousand thoughts going a mile a minute here, so it's kind of hard to tell if Dex fully hears him in this scene, if he fully kind of still respects Nadim, because you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it the way I like to look at it is that he could have killed Nadim along with the other FBI agents, but he didn't kill Nadim because because he has that respect for Nadim. By the same token, though, you could say that Fisk obviously needs Nadim. Therefore, okay, if you're going to kill everybody, just don't kill Nadim.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't think about the second part because I was so convinced about the first part. I gotta admit,
it could be a little of both. In all honesty, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd like to think it's, at the very least, I like to think it's both.
All right.
But that scene, I like to think that scene from earlier kind of is the reason he spared his life.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely think that he has some sort of loyalty to Nadim for sure.
Yeah, and in essence, his bacon is saved by the fact that it's a devil that he knows, but he doesn't quite know who's underneath the mask.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, moving right along. Let's get into. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let's get into some daring dynamics. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with Karen and Maggie. We haven't talked about Maggie in a few episodes. So let's check in with her. I really like this whole view that Maggie has on Matt is like still like the scared little kid, and like the whole speech that she gives Karen about how everyone in Matt's life abandoned him, including herself. Like she had a lot of kids that she was looking after, and she couldn't go to Matt one night. And I don't know, you explain it, Dragon. You're probably better at it than me.
Well, the idea is that she has this. This is the other wake up call I was referring to. So she has a scene with Sister Maggie, which again, knowing what we know about Maggie being Matt's mother, I love the idea that it's kind of like the mother gets to meet the girlfriend, at least meet the ex girlfriend, just gets to meet someone who's important to Matt. And she can kind of sniff out, oh, you still like her, don't you, Matthew? And basically, we get this excellent story about Matt's self-reliance, like what drives the self-reliance and what drives kind of the mentality. He just wants to do it, basically the stick mentality. He wants to do it himself and just kind of be kind of cut off from his friends. And she kind of gives an origin to that. Gives like one again. There's several factors, including stick in the fray, but like one of the original kind of factors in play where it's kind of a beautiful story. The idea that Maggie, and this is like kind of a famous thing with that character too. The idea is like Maggie, of course, she never told him that never told the young Matt Murdock that she was his mother, but she was there for him at times because again, she worked at the place, she worked at
Right.
the church, and therefore, like when he was kind of having nightmares, again, probably pre-stick would be my guess. Like he's having nightmares, and the idea by nightmares, it means like he can hear everyone around him, but again, doesn't know if it's a power or what. Just he says hearing all these voices in his head when he goes to sleep at night. And she would hold his hand when he was scared. And like the one night that she missed because she was tending to all these other children. In essence, the choice that Maggie made to again devote herself to kind of the nunhood and just kind of the sister. Sorry, not the nun, the sisterhood. To devote herself to the sisterhood of being there for many kids instead of like the one child, and doing in her commitment to that grander thing to help people. She kind of she avoided this one kid, or at the very least her son, more accurately. But again, like the one child, and because of that, because she missed that one time, he never asked for anything again. He was self-reliant and was always just doing things. He never put trust into the Duke to solve things for him. And of course, I'm sure Stick didn't help when eventually he met him, and he left him high and dry too.
Yeah, of course.
There's basically an origin for Matt's trust issues and why he kind of feels like he has to do everything alone. This kind of wake up call for Karen that she also gets from Foggy in a different story. She kind of sees, okay, there's a theme going on here. She kind of gets to the point of where it all started with Maggie, where Matt's always felt alone, and Karen can't let that happen. So Karen initially she did not want to help Daredevil at all, which is why she kind of like rebuffed him with the rent thing earlier. She's like, I hear what you're saying, I'm not going to help you, and this is what changes her mind majorly with Maggie here. And also, I love the fact that Maggie reads Karen's articles, that she, in keeping tabs on Daredevil and presumably at the very least Matt Murdock, you kind of read a lot of Karen's work.
Mm-hmm.
And know each other through again. Like Karen's developed quite the reputation through all the Netflix shows. Like as a reporter, like she's had articles in all the Netflix shows, like Iron Fist as well. Like Iron Fist, Luke Cage. She's always been referenced in some way or another through her work. It's a nice little meet again the girlfriend meeting the mother is just kind of it's kind of a nice idea, but also again these two characters are going to have kind of a definite bond going on here. The two women, again, the women in Matt Murdock's life is always kind of as same thing Wilson Fisk, and the women in their lives really define who they are, and I think it's as it goes on we're going to see even more with the whole Maggie and Karen kind of dichotomy. So,
gotcha. All right, so piggybacking off of that, let's talk about Foggy and Karen. Dragon, honestly, like a contender for my blinding moment, but I didn't go with it just because, of course, it's a big part of this dynamic. But I love Foggy's speech about sticking up for friends even if they treat you like crap, because it's like leaving Matt behind, abandoning Matt when everyone else in his life has. Like that would, like what would that say about them? Like like that would be on them as opposed to like Matt treating them like crap, which is on Matt. I don't know. Again, I don't really do good talking about like these kind of character beats, but yeah, you know what I mean though. That's definitely kind of like the crux of the arc between Foggy and Karen this episode is that conversation.
Yeah, and of course, the thing they have in common, they're both dealing with the fallout and the implications of the devil they know, again, just with the thematic kind of crux of it all there. They have. I love how we start the episode off with the conversation. We continue the conversation from the end of last episode about the whole killing of Wesley and how Karen views herself as kind of this, as kind of a devil, or kind of viewing her sin. I love how Foggy comes to her aid of the kind of herself here by saying, like, look, it was self-defense. You know, you're my friend, and you know, you're just my strong friend who kind of kept us to herself all this time. And I wish I could have been there for. Again, Foggy's being very supportive as he is. And again, this what I've said it before, but again, just to kind of abbreviate here. Again, it's like the two sides of Matt Murdock who are again kind of like almost debating each other to an extent. Where again, she's viewing herself as she's putting all the weight on her own shoulders here. Where Foggy's trying to cushion it with like, hey, look, everything's going to be okay. And again, Karen just tries to push him away with the whole, I shot him 7 times, Foggy, 7 times.
I got to admit that is a good argument for yeah, I'm not saying she is evil, but you know, that is a good argument for, you know, like, yeah, that's problematic, you know, that's not good.
But better people than I have brought this up, but I feel it is kind of warranted here. If you look at Karen's arc in the series, in terms of what the conversation's about here between these two characters, Karen's actions in the past have again gotten good people killed, like Ben Urich being the operative example.
Right.
And again, she kind of pushed Ben into that situation. I'm not saying Ben wouldn't have gotten there on his own, but it's the fact that he tricked her into going to meet Kingpin's mother, which of course got him killed. And Karen, with these actions like this and Wesley and all this stuff, again, a lot of that is fueling what she just needs to hear someone that she trusts. She needs to hear Foggy, someone who, again, she's not on the like she can't hear this from Matt because again wouldn't hold as much water, but from Foggy, again, like the diametrically the most positive good character in the series, the most kind of unbloodied hand character of the series, Foggy Nelson, to tell her that she's a bad person so she can believe it, and he won't do it. It's a true blue friendship, and again, the fact again it fits the Foggy's kind of philosophy of Matt Peel bailed on Matt for his whole life, and we can't do that. I'm not gonna be one of those people who just kind of bailed on him and just kind of let him wasn't there for him, which again complements the whole Sister Maggie scene. So it's really good.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Finally, the big one, Dragon. The big one. Let's get into Fisk and Dex.
Here's one for the ages, folks. This is a great one. So I love that so Fisk and Dexter, of course, they use lunch as kind of the olive branch. Basically, it's kind of the excuse they've had to meet each other, and we use this as the final meeting they have. So again, the thing is, Dex just being kind of the old the old kind of the guard and the prisoner dynamic that they started having, or it's just like convict, pretty much like the Rick Flag Deadshot sort of dynamic they've kind of had. It's far better, it's a far more intricate version of that, but it's like one of the few things Suicide Squad did well, just why I believe it. Point being, anyway, like they're using lunch as like the final physical interaction they have as far as they're concerned there. And so Dex, Dex I love that Dex, he calls Fisk out on the plot with Julia. He says, look, I know what you pulled. I learned it from Quantico. Okay. And he basically is trying to get like the final word there. He wants to call out Fisk of I'm, basically, Fisk is so in control, he's not even responding to Dex here, saying, like, she doesn't mean anything to me. You can see visually. Again, I love what we're saying without saying it here.
Bitch, please, essentially.
Essentially, where Dex is like, he's sweating, he's flop sweating. Like, the guy, he hadn't slept the whole night because he was listening to the tapes over and over again. We saw when he woke up, remember, when he woke up at the start of the episode, he had the headset on. He's been listening to the tapes the whole night. Sweating up a storm, and of course, he's very nervous about things, and he's mentally he's fried even before he gets fired because again he lost Julie, and he blames Fisk for this, so he confronts him on it. But again, Fisk being in control is just silent and just versus basically we have the silent in control character sitting versus this unhinged guy just kind of like waiting to dig in like an untrained pit bull or something. He's just like waiting to dig into Fisk, and and just just kind of like dig into him. And again, it's just the desperation versus the utter control of their dynamic here. And then we have the parallel that we set up in episode 5 that plays out so wonderfully here. And again, this is an example of what good writing happens when you take your time and you lay things out like little by little, and you have like the real meat and potatoes of it here, where Fisk's response so calculated and so prepared. Like he's been waiting for. He knows he's going to come to him. He knows he's going to show up, and he's going to. I love that he doesn't even make any illusions that he's not going to figure out the whole Julie thing. The Kingpin is prepared for this. Because again, he can put two and two together. Okay, you got her the job because she mentioned, like she just got a job out of the blue. Which I mean, you even us, the viewing audience, we can put two and two together there. It's like it's
Right.
Fisk. So I love the parallel of them committing murder as boys, and that's kind of Fisk's foot in the door, so to speak. Where it says, I committed murder when I was 12 years old. I haven't even ridden a subway by myself. Like all that, just wonderful dialogue. And Fisk essentially he spins death as a noble pursuit where the world will condemn him for it. Like it's like they shouldn't punish. They punish people like us, who make the tough calls. Essentially, is what he's saying. Like, you and I make the tough calls. You've killed people, but again, you've killed people in service of what they've turned you into. I think one of the best lines that Fisk has in the whole thing is he wants him to embrace the truth. Like, you've crafted many fictions for yourself. The society wants to turn you into something acceptable. That whole thing, like you'll never fit into normal society. And he's just calling like, don't try to fit into normal society. Embrace the truth, which, as we know, one of the best things about the Kingpin as a character in this show is the fact that Fisk is an honest guy. Fisk knows, he embraces truth. He never lies. As far as we can tell, Fisk never lies. At least he believes what he's saying. At the very least, the closest thing to a lie, he believes in what he's doing.
Sure.
Again, he's not about fictions at all, which is what Dex is. Again, he's all about crafting fictions and just kind of trying to fit into the societal norm. And this brings into the whole experience of season 1 and Vanessa. And I love how we call this in the question here, where Tiki. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out on it here. Forgive me. It's so cool. I love the fact that this. He says, you've ruined things with Julie, and Fisk's response is so perfect here. Where he says, if it was true, then nothing could ever destroy it. Because again, knowing what we saw in season 1 with Vanessa and everything, again, embracing the truth, but also, again, if you're true to her, even if she sees your ugly side, she's going to be with you. Otherwise, it wasn't meant to be.
Exactly, right.
And we've seen that unfold. We know exactly. I love it. Great. All so at the end of the day, he definitely cements himself in preventing Dex's suicide. And importantly, he cements himself as the new Dark North Star for Dex. Again, as Dr. Mercer said, you need a North Star for your morality. You need something to kind of steer you in the right direction. And Fisk's promise is that he will never abandon him. If you choose to accept the gift I have for you, I will never abandon you. And again, this is the deal with the devil that is presented. The literal deal with the devil in terms of deal with the devil's suit more accurately that he makes.
Yeah, this is like the most connective, like devil like Dex is definitely like, all right, like this guy, clearly a bad guy, clearly someone who is on the wrong side of society. But then again, he's making a good point. I am too. There's a lot of connective thematic tissue between the two of us. And yeah.
And just by the by, one last thing. These are my favorite types of Kingpin stories, by the way. The one where Kingpin takes somebody and he transforms them into something in kind of a deal with the devil sort of way. I love this type of story. And the fact that we did it with Bullseye, oh God, I can't get enough. I love it. I'm head over heels for it. Okay, speaking of stuff we're head over heels for.
All right, so let's get into... Oh, I'm sorry, we're switching segments here. My bad. Okay, let's get into Dare to be Different. All right.
Yes.
All right, let's see. Well, like I said, Dragon, we really do that great kind of visualization of what's going on in Dex's head, and it's going to ultimately kind of build to my blinding moment. But you want to talk about, just generally speaking, how it's directed?
Yes, well, I want to say something about the director, because something occurred to me on a rewatch. Here's a big one I want to get in there about the direction as a whole, but specifically with the director. So, of course, this is directed by debatably the best of all the Marvel Netflix directors. Directed by Steven Zurich. Steven Zurich, of
Okay.
course, he's what I noticed on a rewatch and kind of thinking about it is that there is a trilogy of the Kingpin arc in all of Steven Zurich's episodes. Think about it. He directed each season. There's one Kingpin episode that he directed. He did Shadows Under Glass in season one. He did 7 Minutes in Heaven, which is the prison episode with the Kingpin.
Sure.
And then you have this one again. You gotta remember the trippy thing is this is the last.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. If you look at it, it's almost like a trilogy. You know what I mean? It's like without the context of the individual episodes, you could still follow like the dramatic tension and how these characters are relating to each other. Specifically, Kingpin and Matt. That they're back and forth with each other. It's very well illustrated throughout the the flow of these 3 episodes. You're right.
Yeah, like season one. In the season one episode, you have the origin of the Kingpin, and essentially you got to see the vision of the Kingpin, where again what he wanted to do for the city. It ends with him going public. That's season one. So that's the beginning of the trilogy. Then you have the season 2 episode, where essentially that's the creation of the criminal version of the Kingpin, where again he dons the name Kingpin in the prison system, and again he's we see the beginning of the criminal vision of what he can do, fully. Like, he's figuring himself out in season 1. Like, he learns at the end of season 1 he is the bad guy. Season 2 is like, okay, I'm the bad guy, and here's how I can do it. Here's how I can build an empire from wherever I am. Like, it's him fully kind of he's getting there. And by the 3rd episode, with this episode, the big thing is again with him donning the white suit and everything, is that this is a full-fledged Kingpin. He figured out the name in season 2, and now he's donning the suit. He's full-fledged, and he's encouraging the next generation in Bullseye. So just think about how, oh my God, it's just, that's so, and it not even, I can only assume it wasn't figured out from the start of things. Okay, they had no idea, they probably had no idea they were coming back for more seasons. They were probably hoping for that. I can only imagine that it was just, again, just the fact that, again, like, if you could take a guy who just kind of comes into a season and kind of does that one episode, and again, you have like a running thread through all of it with kind of each stage we see of the Kingdom progressively getting more and more powerful. It's just so well crafted.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, in the direction too. So the direction, of course, we have the action is flawless. Just to kind of skirt around a little bit. The action is flawless. There's an authenticity, and there's just such an authenticity to the action in the comics. Whenever Daredevil and Bullseye would shake it up, it looks exactly like it ever would. Perfect in that regard.
Very much holds true to the the flowing action of the show, how the camera moves. It's not necessarily a hallway fight, but it's a fight in a very contained space.
Yes, there were a few oneers. Like, there wasn't one continuous oneer, but when they first started, the point, again, there's a little bit of semantics there, but we'll get into that momentarily. What I'm getting at, though, here's a big. Let me hit you with 2 really great examples of the direction too. Again, I'm just basically this is the Steven Zurich love hour, folks. So you take a seat on the beanbag chair. Anyway, let me talk about Hello, Karen. Okay, Hello, Karen is brilliant. See, on the rewatch, it's kind of.
Oh God, he's terrifying, dude.
No, Tiki. I'm sorry. I'm hoping I'm going to blow your mind here, but again, I won't bet the farm on it. Okay, so start of the episode, before the cold open, it's Matt goes into it and says, "Hi, Karen."
Yes.
We start with the "Hi, Karen." You end with the darker "Hello, Karen" with the other Daredevil. So full circle and awesome.
I mean, yeah, it is pretty full circle. You're right. That is nice.
Again from and also I just love that. I look again. Of course, it is a brilliant move too, because again the video cameras there and everything. He's saying that witnesses of the video camera. The point being, I know it's on camera. I forget if it was planned to be on. Basically, a witness's confession was going to happen. It's reasonable to assume they knew a camera was going to be there. Point being, he's been instructed to say hello, Karen. So they established that he's the real Daredevil because Karen Page knows Daredevil very publicly, and she's been saved by Daredevil, being the idea.
Right.
So it's there for that reason. By the same token, though, I just love just how it comes. It comes across like a pleasant hello after all of these atrocities. It's just, hello, Karen. Good to see you again. They leaves. It's just it's great. Oh God! Another example. Speaking of Karen, so another thing that the editing of the episode is really good too. Because remember the opening of the episode before we reveal the whole hi Karen thing, before we put that in the play, we cut between 2 scenes. We cut between the continued conversation from 5 between Foggy and Karen. And right. Karen waking up after that long night of, again, like she's really put herself, like, it's got to be like a gut-wrenching experience, like confessing to the murder of Wesley and kind of really looking negatively upon herself. and she's waking up the next morning like with a hangover, probably. She's down some aspirin. And then, of course, so between that and her waking up the next morning, so it's really good editing from the start. They're just getting Karen's state of mind from that scene to the next morning. And of course, Matt being the thing being talked about, it's bringing all this forth, being kind of the payoff. So really great direction, all those little direction editing. Let's see.
The music.
Yes, the music's great.
I mean, honestly, Dragon, let's just be real. This is kind of a triple threat, or, however many threats there are. This episode kind of takes all of them. It's like directing, editing, cinematography, music, action, character building, themes. It's all there. It's kind of like a it is the biggest episode of the season so far in terms of just like building everything up. It's pretty much a very satisfying kind of like mid-season point here. Of course, episode 7 is the true like, technical mid-season, the middle of the season, but in terms of like ending the first half of it, episode 7 is kind of the transitioning point, but this is like the finale of the first half. And so they really do pull out all the stops.
Yeah. Let's see, of course, because it really pays off this episode. Again, the parallel and the mentorship of Fisk and Dex. I mean, the payoff of that, and of course, the idea that Fisk has created like a more subservient version of the Punisher, like he kind of did in season 2. That's really great. As I mentioned earlier, the themes of sin and having a deal with the devil, whole devil idea, like all of that's really, really great and does apply to the characters in many ways, shapes, or forms. Let's see. We took the straightforward again. I want to appreciate it here, just with how far again, how Herculean a task it was. We took how far gone, like the Fisk's long game manipulation on Dex, how far it paid off here. We take this straightforward FBI agent, just kind of this like shoot from the hip, just kind of follow orders FBI agent, like, and we turn him into the costumed villain. By episode 6,
right. Just like smiling maniacally, just like all into it.
Think about it, just how remarkable that is. That we didn't like he's just donning the costume because he has to. It's like you buy that, you buy the manipulation, how calculated, and how he got there, and we learned so much about it. And we only learned about him really in one episode before this.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, he's not in the first episode. He's in roughly 4 to, I'm being generous, let's say 4 to 5 episodes, 4 at the very least. And again, we little moments too. Wasn't even a lot in some of those episodes, and we accomplished so much. The black and white
to show kind of like the insidious power that Fisk has over people. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't even necessarily have to be like a lot of interactions face to face, but it's just enough to kind of worm your way into your head.
Yeah, the costuming. So I want to talk about the costuming here because, of course, costuming has a big payoff in this episode. So one. Again, the scene where they have like their the last kind of physical interaction, Fisk and Dex. Of course, we had the black and white color scheme where Fisk is wearing the white suit with the the black, and which, by the way, I looked into it. Apparently, that was going far back. I don't know how deep the pool is. Traditionally, Kingpin, he wears the white suit with the purple underneath. That's kind of what people know him for. But in the main source material they pulled from this series, Man Without Fear, the very first kind of one of the very first Frank Miller Daredevil stories. Kingpin, he wears a kind of white. The John Romita Jr. Kingpin has a white suit with the black underneath. So it's kind of looked at a little deep cut thing. Is kind of noticed. Getting ready for this. Anyway, point being, again, the color contrast between Dex wearing the black suit with the white underneath and Kingpin vice versa. That's kind of cool and showing there's a kingship there and the visualize the parallel. Of course, Bullseye's kind of classic colors as well. But again, the more important thing with the costume that I haven't mentioned before is that Dex donning the suit, Dex donning the Daredevil suit, which of course is representation of the future, and then Daredevil at his peak state versus Matt, kind of his season 1 attire, and again, just kind of the more weathered. Again, he's playing hurt this season, that whole thing. So again, the costume is really reflective of how far Matt's. It's almost like an evolutionary chart of Daredevil. One go versus the other. It's kind of cool. Sister Maggie, of course, she was wonderful. And we use her sparingly, but she's very impactful. And after all the earlier setup that we dedicated to her, so, when she shows up, it counts.
Sure.
The dialogue and the stories. The dialogue's really strong, but also we pull a couple stories. We pulled at least 2 to 3 stories in this episode, and they all just they aren't just filling time. It's not just like, okay, we need stories to kind of fill time for the episode. We just need acting for a couple minutes. It's not just that. It's like
Looking at you, Punisher season 1. Sorry, but it's true.
Yes, but true. But like we have, for example, the scene with sorry, I got to mention here with different, Dare to be different. The scene, Fisk talking about his mother's passing, which I already felt like, oh man, I felt so bad for him here, and of course just the fact that again Fisk adding another reason he hates Matt Murdock and Daredevil. He took me away from my mother in her last years.
Sure.
And I love the fact of the whole shoebox story, and that's how he kind of saves Dex at the end of the day there, where he mentions that his mother kept a box full of old trinkets from his childhood, like things that he made her, and of course one of the big things in there, the hammer that he killed his father with, in like a box of the childhood things that she valued, that she loved from, even in she kept the hammer. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. That's great storytelling there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's nothing going to waste. Just kind of good storytelling. The fact, even like the whole Maggie story from earlier. Let me see if there's anything major here. I love the little detail of Dex shutting off the cameras before he has a scene with Fisk. Because it's always like, oh man, don't you think they'd shut off the cameras? And we actually see it. We actually dedicate a bit to it. He's shutting them all off before he goes down for his little scene with them. We use. I'm sorry. I'll save it for the. I don't want to trounce on your moments. I think we're. One last thing, Ellison. Okay, so Ellison gets hurt and we care about him. It's not just we hurt a major character for the drama. It's like, oh no, not Ellison. Because I was really freaked out the first time I watched it. When Ellison got stabbed. I thought,
because it's another attack on the bulletin, and Ellison has kind of definitely evolved into the Uric mentor figure through 3 seasons for Karen. So, I mean, if they were going to kill off Ellison, this definitely would have been a logical place to do it within the story.
And I was so terrified because I thought he was a goner until I saw like the next episode or so. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I was thinking, I didn't see him again.
All right.
Okay, well, there's the point is, as Tiki said, the episode's just there's so much good in this episode. We're going to be here all day. I think it's a good place to.
Okay. All right, so let's, holy crap, Dragon, put on your sunglasses because we have to stare into the blinding moment of awesome.
Blinded you with Murdoch.
It burns.
My eyes.
All right. Okay, so basically, Dragon, our scenes kind of dovetail into each other, essentially. So we've already brought this scene up, the moment where Dex is pushed to his breaking point. And Dragon, what I want to mention here specifically is this is such a good, like, folks, I'm not saying that I've ever been truly suicidal or anything, but I am saying that I have hit low points. I have grappled with depression, and this whole thing of the voices in your head being the voices of loved ones, but those voices being twisted around, and he literally being able to hear loved ones saying terrible things about you. I mean, folks, I'm sorry, but it's the scary but true reality of living with depression. It's like that is something that you experience, just these because we all have an inner monologue, but one of the things about depression is that the inner monologue is just jacked up to 11 sometimes, especially in moments like this, in moments of extreme anguish, extreme trial in your life. So, Dragon, that's really all I want to highlight is just how they got that just completely right with Julie. Basically, we essentially see him grappling with the gun, and just the nonverbal acting on him. He's just sweating profusely. He's panting. He's he's just very intense as he's loading the gun. And we hear the conversation on the other end, on the phone in his head playing out, where Julie's essentially it's a mirror image of Dex, when we first saw him in the Suicide Helpline Center, where he's kind of giving the dark advice to the guy on the other end of the phone before Julie walks back. And he's like, no, I'm here to help you. It must have been really hard. So essentially we see that play out with Julie, where she's like, how are you going to do it, Dex? What kind of gun are you going to use? Is it loaded? You're useless, Dex. You mean nothing to me. I don't want you in my life. Essentially like all these little insults just hurled at him all at once in the voice of the person who's supposed to be his North Star.
Well,
And Dragon, as we already mentioned, just kind of to kind of dovetail into the North Star point, is that Julie, I really don't even know if there was any sexual attraction to Julie. I think it was more so a sense of normalcy. You know what I mean? Like normal people.
well, we know it wasn't sexual. He goes on to say it wasn't sexual at all. So.
Right. But I'm saying it's a really interesting counterpoint to how Fisk ends up is that North Star. It's like the guy who ruined his chances with her is now going to be the one who's really going to take him under his wings. So, and of course, Dragon, we build up to the gunshot. We build up all these voices in his head, kind of culminating. And right before he can pull the trigger, the phone rings. And we get that conversation with Fisk, basically Fisk telling him, I'm sorry, that's basically where we can end it because we already kind of went over everything else. So,
one thing I got to highlight, Tiki, what's so brilliant about how they did that, of course, we're using all the dialogue from episode 5, essentially, all the snippets, because, of course, it's wonderfully set up because this is a character who listens to the audio tapes over and over again. So, like, it fits into exactly how, it feels special to Bullseye as well. It feels special to Dex, where, again, this is a character who kind of lives in kind of like, kind of the words of the past. Like all the Dr. Mercer tapes, are memorized in his head. So it's kind of what's coming to mind. And the recent Julie stuff is really kind of like fresh in his mind. And what's so brilliant about what they did here, Tiki, even though I'll bridge into my scene too, where what they did with that Julie stuff, Tiki, and that's exactly what he said to the guy on the other line of the.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like we did this thing where this is what brings into my moment here, where again, like he's basically having Julie like tell him like you're all alone. Like it's like Dr. Mercer's words of like when he's having that scene with the demon earlier on, and we did this throughout the whole episode too, which is kind of cool. Like when he's spiraling, like when he's having that scene with the demon, it's like he's hearing like, "What do you fear, Dex? Like loneliness, just emptiness, and just being alone." And then of course we have like Julie saying, all the stuff that he said negatively on the suicide hotline, and. What's so great, we then transition to my scene, which is basically the Daredevil versus Daredevil thing.
Oh, so,
yeah. Basically the big showdown here. And I love that. Real quick before I really kind of dive into mine.
I can just take the floor on this thing.
Okay, I'll address your thing when I get there. So let me just.
Okay.
So I love again. Okay. Oh God, there was no question. This is giving me my blind moment of awesome. It's the question how long it goes on for. I'm just going to take the floor with you. So I love the two Daredevils going up against each other because one, this is a huge moment from Born Again. Daredevil versus Daredevil. Big thing the whole season was marketed on. Like the big showdown. Whoever was going to be in the Daredevil suit, and thankfully it was Bullseye. And one that's just an ingenious way to go about it, where you put the Bullseye in the suit, which I believe I'm pretty sure he was not in the suit in the comics. I'm like 95% sure he wasn't in the. So the point is, it's a great like new idea. Like, put the arch enemy in the Daredevil suit just to make it even cooler. And it's. And I just love the thing on the rewatch. I keep getting jazzed on, but the reason's like so blinding, I guess, is the Western entrance. I love the Western entrance here, where Foggy walks into the room with all these dead bulletin reporters, like dead on the floor, like Bullseye in the suit.
Like a mix between a Western and a horror movie.
Yes. He walks over to a lady, and basically the signature death of Bullseye many a time, like the way he likes to kind of twist the knife, so to speak, is killing people with their own weapons. And of course, like Elektra, in the comics, he kills Elektra with her own sai. And of course, as many times he kills people Daredevil care about with his own, billy clubs. So what I'm saying is, I love the interest here. Where it's about like all these W. He picks like the thing out of this. He picks the billy club out of the woman's neck, and then he sees Foggy. And in that moment, right before he does it, right before we have the big Western showdown. You have like you have the voices in his head, and this is a really clever thing here where you hear like Fisk having some lines of dialogue to him there, and of course this leads to him having that smile of satisfaction. And so let me put it this way: it goes from Fisk having the words that he said to him, basically people will punish you, but we then have Dex say Fisk's words. We just show in dialogue with that kind of thought device that we have with Bullseye that he's in line with Fisk now. Fisk is the Dark North Star. It says, the world punishes people like us, but it's Dex saying that. And he has that reassuring smile and gives him like a calm sweeps over, and then he tosses the billy club. It's about to kill poor Foggy Nelson who walked in at the wrong time. No, Foggy, no! And then Matt just swoops, he grabs it in midair. He just grabs the billy club right before it hits Foggy's face. And Matt, it's the first time he's held the billy club the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like flipping it around as he's walking forward, just piecing it together. What's happening? He's like, oh man, it's a billy club. Basically, he's inferring that, okay, this guy's in the Daredevil suit right now. and it's just like the perfect showdown moment. And Tiki, I'm geeking out so much because again, this is something like for the whole of the series. The two big Daredevil enemies. It's Kingpin and it's Bullseye. Bullseye, of course, being the physical threat for to go up against Daredevil.
Of course, yeah.
And this being something I've been waiting for the longest time, when it happens, it's so worth it. And it's and again, just the novelty of, again, Daredevil, and I don't mean to just keep saying this over and over again, but yeah, it's such a cool idea that it's Daredevil essentially in his prime, in the suit, like where we left off with him in Defenders, in essence, with even better accuracy, versus, again, the Matt Murdock who's been playing hurt this whole season, and again, is basically Matt's ultimate punishment is this character, is this representation of what you gave up being, when you kind of ceased to be, like the Daredevil with all the connections, making the friends super powered or not. You've forsaken that. You've forsaken the goal. You've forsaken the mission and where it took you, and now you're just. And this is the ultimate punishment for him. And of course, Bullseye in an office space is one of the most perfect settings. You have like all these odds and ends things that he can throw at people. They have like a pencil cup,
scissors, the computer monitor. It's
so well structured. Again, the idea like we have a few wonder shots here and there, and it's so great if you notice just the structure of the place. There's like on a rewatch, there's so many action bits. We're going to be here all day if I go through all of them. Like he avoids a hit and slides under a desk and gets on the other side of it, and then he'll like jump over a desk and like grab the all the stuff in the pencil cup, which of course includes like pens and scissors, and of course he'll be armed with all these stuff from the desk of all these bulletin all these bulletin reporters, and it's like the worst place you could ever fight Bullseye. All these like weapons he could throw at you, as well as being in a suit that essentially protects him from a lot of like kind of physical combat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just thousands and thousands of weapons he's throwing them. And again, like seeing Matt completely out, he's finally outmatched. It's the first time in the series we've ever seen him truly outmatched. Where again, he's going up against Bullseye, and like, of course, Bullseye thematically, he uses there's like a sports writer at the bulletin. He throws a baseball and it ricochets, like the ricochet factor. Like Matt tries to reach for a pen himself and like get slammed right out of his hand. And we have like that brutal finisher shot where Daredevil, like the last, again, if he could see, it would really hurt. If you see like Daredevil is about to kick you in the face, and then of course in knocking him out, he goes on to kind of ruin his friends' lives. He punches Foggy across the room. He stabs Ellison. He kills Jasper Evans. Like all the hope is dashed because Matt wasn't good enough there. And of course, then the aftermath of Matt's kind of walking out of the place injured and having all the stuff sticking out of him, like, all these odd.
He's like walking for a pretty significant distance with those scissors just sticking out of his chest.
It's so good. It's everything I ever could have wanted from the Bullseye Daredevil fight. In my wildest dreams, it's just, the only way it could have been perfect, but again, it would have defeated the purpose of the story right now if he was in the Bullseye suit. That'd be the only.
Right.
If he was in the Bullseye suit and Daredevil was in the Daredevil suit, like that's the only way we can make it better. But again, it wouldn't make sense for what's happening in the story, so it's fine. It's just absolutely just stellar stuff. Love it. Okay.
All right, so let's move on to our penultimate segment tonight here, folks. Woot woot, let's hop a train aboard the Braille Trail.
Yeah, as Braille. All right, so big one I got to hit at the start here, and we'll toss it to you here. Cufflinks. So I did notice this. I don't know why I never noticed this before, but the cufflinks. So Fisk, of course, in Fisk suiting up again, and when he dons the white suit, they've returned all the items to him. They were starting to return his possessions, and of course, one of the big things is he has this whole drawer full of cufflinks. And you'll notice that he has the cufflinks of his father, but the ones that he puts on are the cufflinks that Vanessa picked for him. That he's always worn. I rewatched it to make sure I wasn't crazy here, because the end of episode 8, again, this plays in the whole Steven Zurich trilogy thing. There's kind of a coupling trilogy. I wanted to kind of hold off to here say it's a coupling trilogy, but there is kind of a coupling trilogy too, where he wore his father's cufflinks.
The Edgar Wright trilogy is the 3 flavors trilogy. This is the 3 cufflinks trilogy.
Well, in a way, yeah. It's kind of think about this. Okay, so it's he wore his father's cufflinks at the start of things, and of course that was for the significance of, again, he was in his father's shadow. But when he met Vanessa at the end of the episode 8 in season 1, she picked out the new cufflinks, which kind of these really cool looking square black and silver ones. And by the end of and of course in season 2, where we see him being booked, the last thing that has the most significant thing when he gives over his possessions to the prison. During the intake process, it's the cufflinks. They, again, I just assumed were his father's cufflinks, but again, very long ago. But now I've just kind of had my mind blown by, oh my god, the reason. Or I know the cufflinks are important as a concept in general, which is what I assume. But Vanessa's the cufflinks, the cufflinks are a symbol of Vanessa. And again, in getting the cufflinks back, it's a symbol of how close he is to. He literally wears his heart on his sleeve, Tiki. He does. He wears his heart on his sleeve with the symbol of Vanessa, and the thing that Fisk wants, he's now wearing. He's that much closer to getting with the cufflinks. It's brilliant.
Yeah. All right, I don't really have a ton to add, Dragon. Let's see. We get, of course, some parallels to Karen with the drug den stuff, which I already mentioned. Mm-hmm. Basically building Karen a lot, of course, because we're going to get that big Karen episode later on, so we're kind of paving the road for that.
Okay, as I mentioned, Born Again with the 2 Daredevil suits, and also the kind of a little. I was kind of happy to find this out because I was unsure of how it went down until the rewatch here. That Felix Manning, of course, in the comics, Felix Manning is the guy who made the second Daredevil suit. So he was behind the whole 2 Daredevil things in Born Again. And here, Felix Manning is the guy who shows up and says he brought him the Daredevil suit, and he says, "Hey, you need a ride?" That guy.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a nice. It's a very solid, kind of pull from the book. Go on.
I don't know what else, man. I don't know.
Julie's mentioned, so Julie's important.
Yes.
I'd say the Billy Club deaths again, like Death by Billy Club is going to be a huge foreshadow for the season. Let's see. Dex. We see that Dex keeps the tapes, his personal tapes from Dr. Mercer, in a safe, and of course that safe's going to be important a few episodes from now. Is the fact that he keeps it in that specific safe, hidden behind the wall. Let's see. Both Matt and Daredevil are framed by Fisk. Ellison is wounded. Again, we'll find out how critically, but little spoiler, probably not as critically as we think. Kingpin wearing the white suit, having that whole payoff in the grand scheme of things, and wearing the white that he's kind of fascinated by, and the whole rabbit in the snowstorm, that whole idea.
Yeah, we're definitely building towards Nadeem kind of coming around to everyone's side. Although, of course, we do hit a speed bump with the Daredevil being framed. It's still, it's still kind of like I would say maybe a 3 steps forward, 1 step back sort of deal. So, even though the Daredevil thing is a speed bump, he's still making some progress in the right direction.
Yeah, and also you have speaking of the Nadeem, you have like Hatley giving. Hadley gives pause to the whole Fisk conning the FBI reveal, because remember, she's giving pause for a reason. She wants to throw him off the scent, as we're going to find out. So kind of plant the flag in there that, again, she's like, it must be a bluff. And of course, given what happens, it's kind of fascinating. I believe in the next episode, I guess we'll find out if it's that soon we're going to have that big reveal. Let's see. Okay, one other thing with the Demon, I think that should about do it. And bringing up Vanessa and the whole cufflink thing, again, like the idea is that Kingpin is being rewarded with the promises that Nadeem kept to him, that he won't charge Vanessa and everything. So I think it's very fascinating to kind of set up here that, again, Nadeem is holding up his end of the bargain, which will eventually include Vanessa and kind of, in essence, protect Vanessa from the law. And just remember that, folks. So Nadeem has protected Vanessa. We're going to see how that favor is returned in kind. Also, I'm sorry, one last thing. So Maggie knows a lot about Matt's childhood, of course.
Oh, yeah. Good pull. Yeah, for sure.
Right, there we go. That's all it makes.
The whole, I abandoned him, that's definitely going to come back into play for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, Dragon, let's get into the final segment. We're making good time on this. Let's get into the Nelson and Murdoch verdict.
Yeah.
All right. So just generally speaking, final thoughts, of course. Dragon, this is a damn good episode. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's the best of the season. I still think episode 4 so far, like, it's certainly the most ambitious episode, but I don't know. There's something about that giant hallway fight in the prison in episode 4 and, Matt infiltrating the prison and Foggy's identity and everything like that. Like, point being, it's still a really good episode. It's got a lot of connective tissue thematically, like we've already been kind of going over. The whole devil archetype is definitely like woven through the episode in a very fundamental, cool way throughout all the storylines, which is nice and satisfying on a rewatch. The Daredevil versus Daredevil fight is insanely satisfying, very well choreographed. And just generally speaking, it's definitely a great episode of kind of like getting our characters to a low point and a good finale to the first half of the season.
Yes. For me, this episode is kind of. I mean, again, it's kind of like a bittersweet, like we'll meet again, sort of like and a freakazoid feeling I have with this episode. I mean, in the best of ways here, where this episode is kind of the last masterpiece of the Steven Zurich episodes of that trilogy. And in retrospect, I mean, unless by some miracle, if they ever do like Daredevil in the MCU, maybe Steven Zurich would direct a movie in the MCU, or maybe just work with these characters again. But I mean, unfortunately, the reality is it's probably we're either a long ways off from that, or it's not going to happen. One of the two. And what I love about this episode is the grand midpoint of the season, and it visualizes what the whole season's about for the characters, with those characters to an extent as well. We visualize all of this. We visualize again the two Daredevils going up against each other, and like all the stuff that really, again, the midway point of these two characters going up against each other. Again, the aftermath and the fallout being the majority of the season. Like, how do we come back from from this, and again the fact that now Fisk has gotten the Bullseye and created this big problem for all of our characters. This 4-second equal Daredevil, as well as Fisk's kind of his usual kind of formidability. And the episode, as we mentioned, it's very well directed. It's got great action. There's so many nice things to say about this episode. It achieves so many moments. It achieved moments I've waited seasons for, and it's very satisfying. The payoff is very satisfying, seeing these things realized. It revels in the story that they're telling and they're adapting. Again, this to me is an example of how we kind of adapt something without like going by the book, or like by bullet point of like what's in Born Again. We're taking the idea and we're kind of making it our own and kind of complementing this really excellent series in very fitting ways. Just overall, it's simply wonderful. I think it's simply, I can't get enough of this episode. Again, whether it's the best of the season or not, Tiki might have a point there, because again, this season's so good. There's so many other episodes you could say. You can make a
I know that's what I mean. Look, folks, when I'm comparing episodes, it's very much kind of like picking diamonds. You know what I mean?
Bill Diamond was, because I mean 6 and 4
exactly.
are like 6 and 4 are excellent ones, but you could say the same for episodes 1 and 2. I mean, they're all just and 3, of course, 3 being the big, Daredevil and Fisk, ethical dilemma. Like there's so many.
Right.
Look at the first 6 episodes. Look at how strong each and every one you can make an argument for being the best of the season so far. I mean, that's what we're working with. The point being, I love this one. I think just as a grand midpoint one, I think it also. The point being, this episode is just simply wonderful. It's the best way I can put it. I keep saying that over and over again, but it's great. It's that great.
All right. Okay, so let's see. Let's get that a little. All right, so that's all for now until our next daring installment of Discerning Daredevil. Excelsior!
Enough said.